Welcome to our second installment of the Greco-Persian Wars, the Battle of Marathon. Today, we're going to take a look at the first battle to take place on Greek soil between the mighty Persian Empire and the Greeks. But first, some context. The Battle of Marathon was a battle that took place in 490 BCE, when the Persians invaded Greece for the first time. The battle itself took place in the town of Marathon, which is located in Greece. Why did the Persians attack Greek soil, you ask? Well, King Darius, who was the Persian king at the time, ordered his army to attack Athens and Eritrea because of the role these two city-states had played in the Ionian Revolt of 499 BCE. You can check out our previous video on the Ionian Revolt for the deets. This battle featured mainly the Athenians and the Persians, and spoiler alert, the Athenians were the ones who eventually went on to win the battle. But before hearing about what exactly happened during the battle, you should probably know 4 of the important players that featured in this Battle of Marathon. The first person that was important is named Miltiades. Miltiades was one of the Athenian military generals who successfully led the Athenians to victory at the Battle of Marathon. The second important person to know is King Darius. King Darius was the powerful Persian king who never forgot the role the Athenians and Eritreans had played during the Ionian Revolt a few years back. He was the one who sent an army to capture Athens and Eritrea, and it was this provocation that caused the Battle of Marathon to take place. The third person who's important to the Battle of Marathon is Callimachus. Okay, not an actual picture of him. Callimachus was the polemarch to whom Miltiades went for help in deciding whether or not he should risk a battle with the Persians. Callimachus also led the right-wing part of the Athenian army during the battle. The fourth and final person who was important to the Battle of Marathon was Phidippides. Phidippides was an Athenian herald or messenger who worked as a trained runner. He's especially important because of the role he played in running all the way to Sparta in a very short amount of time after being sent by the Athenians to ask for their assistance in fighting against the Persians. Now that you know who the important people in this battle are, it's time to find out what exactly happened in the year 490 BCE. Remember how big the Persian Empire was during the 5th century BCE? Compared to its vast territories, the territory of Greece in blue looks pretty puny. Well, King Darius of Persia wanted to continue expanding Persia's borders after the Ionian Revolt, and this was essentially what set the stage for the conflict between Persia and the Greek city-states that took place in the early 5th century BCE. That and revenge. Remember, he had told everyone to remind him every day of the role that Athens and Eritrea had played during the Ionian Revolt. So, when King Darius began to call on the Greek city-states, demanding that they submit to his rule, not all of them complied. After news of this reached Persia, King Darius ordered his men to capture Athens and Eritrea and to bring the prisoners to him for their involvement in the Ionian Revolt. The Persian army of 25,000 first captured Eritrea and then began the short trip to Attica, where Athens was. Hippias, who was the son of Pisistratus, a former tyrant of Athens, and he was living in exile in Persia at the time, advised the Persians to land at Marathon because it was the most convenient place for them to disembark their weapons and horses, and also because it was located very close to Eritrea. When the Athenians heard of this and saw the large Persian army, they ordered their troops to march to Marathon and stand on the defensive. But they soon realized that they would need more manpower, and so Phidippides, an Athenian herald and runner, was sent to Sparta to ask for their assistance. However, the Spartans were unable to provide the Athenians with the immediate assistance they needed, because there was some law that prevented them from leaving Sparta until the full moon. Back on the plain of Marathon, the Athenian generals could not come to an agreement on whether or not they should risk a battle. And so Miltiades, who was one of the Athenian generals, decided to resolve this impasse by going to the polemarch Callimachus, who advised him to fight the Persians. On the day Miltiades took command of the Athenian army, they were joined by the Plataeans, and he positioned his strongest men on the ends of his lines that stretched across the plain. The weaker ones he positioned in the center because he knew that the Persians always placed their strongest men in the center of their line of attack. The Persians were expected to win the battle, but the Athenians won the intense battle after Miltiades surprised the Persians by ordering his army to charge at them, and eventually the Athenians encircled the remaining Persians who attempted to flee. The Persians were chased all the way back to their ships, and at the end of the day, the Greeks actually ended up with a low number of casualties, whereas the Persians suffered a heavy loss. But this enormous loss didn't mark the end of the war just yet. The surviving Persians boarded their ships and took off in an attempt to reach Athens before the Athenians themselves returned. This time round, they failed again because the Athenians were prepared for this invasion. In fact, legend has it that a courier or herald named Philippides, now don't confuse him with Phidippides, who ran to Sparta for help. This Philippides ran all the way from Marathon to Athens in one go to announce the Athenian victory at Marathon and to warn the Athenians of the Persians' impending arrival. According to legend, upon doing so, he collapsed from exhaustion. Once the Persians realized this, they left Athens and set sail for Asia. Approximately 2,000 Spartans eventually arrived in Athens, but after realizing they had come too late to help the Athenians in this fight, they decided to march to Marathon and then return home. So, what's important about this battle? Well, the Battle of Marathon affected Greek history because it was an unexpected victory. The Athenians were able to boast about it because they had stood their ground and won the battle without the help of the Spartans. This battle also affected Greek culture because it became a symbol of Greek and Athenian liberation and a symbol of Greek resistance in the face of barbarians, according to Morcott. In fact, later on, the Athenians would commemorate this experience in the Greco-Persian Wars by renovating the Acropolis, their city center, and building the Parthenon, forever glorifying the strength of Athens and its ability to overcome the Persian invaders. So, before we conclude this video on the Battle of Marathon, you probably want to hear some cool fun facts. Firstly, remember Phidippides and his run from Marathon to Sparta? He ran this long distance in a very short amount of time, and this run was actually the inspiration for the marathon event that takes place in the modern Olympics. The event was introduced at the 1896 Olympics in Athens, and marathon runners originally would run between Marathon and Athens. Secondly, remember the tactics that Miltiades used, in which he placed the strongest men on the ends of the lines and the weaker ones in the center, and his tactic of charging at the enemy directly? Well, these were used for the first time at the Battle of Marathon, and as we now know, proved to be extremely successful. Well, this concludes our video on the Battle of Marathon. We hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening. Tune in to our next installment of the Greco-Persian Wars. Who will ultimately win this clash of civilizations?